You can feel the panic in people's bodies. They're buying gold and silver and mining shares like crazy. They know something's wrong. Silver is the metal of the information age. Without silver, we don't have a future. They play games with that stuff. Like JP Morgan was fined about almost $1 billion for playing games. The reason for that is they sell silver they don't have to keep the price low. But now people say we want delivery. And there's a panic going on because they can't deliver.
What time frame do you see silver potentially hitting 500, and do you think it could happen in a year's time?
They're going to go to print money, which may be hyperinflation. If they don't print, we go to depression. Neither one are good. The Fed is communist, a central bank. And so as long as the Fed is jerking around with the prices, you've got to be more careful, more cautious. I'm afraid we're going to go to war. That's my biggest concern. We're at a currency war. Currency wars lead to trade wars, lead to shooting wars. That's historical. Please be careful right now. That's all I'm saying. Become your own central bank. Have your own gold, have your own silver on hand. I don't trust SLV and I don't trust GLD. But I want to warn people that our money is fake. It was designed to steal our wealth.
You say you're afraid we're going to war. Do you see the global monetary reset happening? Do you think we're starting to see a global monetary reset, with gold being introduced and ultimately replacing the dollar as that global reserve currency or global reserve asset?
This is The Real Story with Michelle Makori.
Hello, I'm Michelle Makori, and thank you for joining me on The Real Story, where we go beyond the headlines, beneath the surface, and behind the curtain to show you what is really happening with money, markets, and power. And joining me today is financial guru Robert Kiyosaki. He is an investor, entrepreneur, and financial educator, and the author of one of the best-selling personal finance books of all time. Rich Dad, Poor Dad sold over 40 million copies, has been translated into more than 50 languages, and shaped how an entire generation thinks about money, debt, and assets versus liabilities. Robert Kiyosaki has written or co-written more than 26 books focused on financial literacy, entrepreneurship, investing, and criticism of the traditional schooling system and the fiat money system. And for decades, Robert has warned about debt-driven monetary systems, fiat currency debasement, and the erosion of purchasing power. Long before gold's recent breakout made headlines, Kiyosaki was outspoken about owning real assets, particularly gold and silver, as well as cash-flowing real estate and businesses. And today, as gold and silver make new highs, silver tightens structurally, and confidence in the dollar system is being openly questioned by governments and markets alike, Robert Kiyosaki's long-held warnings no longer sound that radical. In fact, they sound very timely and on point. Robert, good to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Michelle, thank you. And I'm an old man now, and there's people who've always been in my corner, and I thank you for being in my corner all these years, so I appreciate it. So thank you.
Well, Robert, you have just imparted so much wisdom and insight and useful knowledge that it's hard to not be in your corner, because I know you're just trying to help educate people and try to help people stay ahead as much as you can. And to that point, Robert, you've always been a hard asset guy, from metals to real estate for years. As I've mentioned, you've been warning against currency debasement. And now we have had this movement in the precious metals market, a tremendous rally, triple-digit silver, gold crossing 5,500, 5,600 in futures. Now, granted, we've had a pullback. As of recording on the news that Trump has picked Kevin Warsh as his nominee for the Fed chair. He's perceived as less likely to be influenced by Trump and to preserve central bank independence. So we've had metals slightly pull back on that. We'll get into that later in the show. But the big picture, the trend remains, Robert. So let's start with that. And what does this tremendous run-up in gold and silver signal to you?
It's not good. The good news is I'm getting richer, but the bad news is the middle class is getting wiped out. And as you know, my shtick has been for 35 years now. Why don't we teach money at school? That's been my biggest complaint. So that's why I'm saying you've been on my corner all these years, because I'm like the Rodney Dangerfield. I get no respect. And now everybody's waking up. I was at the VRIC, Vancouver Real Estate Investment Conference, a couple of days ago, and you could feel it on the floor. There was thousands. Their enrollment's up by 30%. You could feel the panic in people's bodies. They're buying gold and silver and mining shares like crazy. They know something's wrong.
Right. And, for the metals investors, we've always said that $10,000 gold is not necessarily a good thing. $27,000 gold, which I know is one of your targets as well as Jim Ricketts' targets, is not necessarily a good thing. It means that structurally things are falling apart. It means that your purchasing power is declining dramatically. And I do want to focus on the big picture macro. But for now, I kind of want to I would like to start with some of the silver moves that we've seen, and then we'll zoom out into the bigger picture, because you've been speaking quite a bit about silver, and that has definitely dominated headlines. We've been seeing silver surge over 200% year over year as of this interview. It's been on a tremendous run. And yes, we have industrial demand surging, especially from solar, electrification, defense, semiconductors. That demand largely price insensitive. At the same time, we've got physical silver supply tightening. We've had 4 consecutive years where the Silver Institute says that global demand has exceeded mine production. Inventories are being steadily drawn down. Silver has been designated a critical mineral essential to national security. And then, of course, you have the monetary side, something that you've always emphasized, that silver is an asset against fiat debasement. Now, those are some of the factors at play here. But Robert, when you put this rising industrial demand together with a tightening physical supply and this renewed monetary interest, it seems to me like this is a setup for a different phase in the silver market.
Yes.
Do you see that? Do you see this as a new era in the silver market?
Yeah. Let me put it in simpler historic terms. The industrial age probably started around 1850 or so, around there. And in the industrial age, metal or iron was the metal, because from iron came steel. And with steel, you could put up the tall buildings and things like this. So steel and iron, actually iron was the ore, that was the defining feature of that time. Well, today in the information age, silver is that structured metal. So without this is a silver Krugerrand, silver is the metal of the information age. And so you don't find me saving iron. Right now, silver is going to define the future, which is why China just locked it all up and they're hoarding their supplies. And silver is very hard to find. I was at Vancouver Resource Investment Conference because I'm a miner. I own gold mines and silver mines. And without silver, we don't have a future. And every Tomahawk rocket, as we know, I think has 4 pounds of silver in it. And you can't find silver. Silver is a byproduct. It's not something you mine for, as most people know. So that's why I've been a silver bug since 1965. When Gresham's law kicked in, I held up a little silver coin. I said, "Why is it copper?" And so what happened in 1965? The U.S. government, or the Treasury, whoever it was, started putting copper into silver. And that's when I became a silver bug. And then in 71, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. And that's when I was flying in Vietnam. I was a Marine pilot in Vietnam. And in 1971, I bought my first piece of gold. This is what's interesting with Corey. Back in 1971, I'm a U.S. Marine helicopter gunship pilot. It was illegal for us to own gold. When I found that out, I went, why? Something's goofy going on. And now what Dalio is saying just recently, that when gold and silver move up in tandem, like this, that's not a good sign. When gold and generally it's like this is gold, this is silver. But silver came up like this. So what Ray Dalio is saying is that means the smart money is dumping fake money to buy gold and silver. And that's what I saw at Vancouver last week. People are panicking. They knew the cash is trash. America's the biggest debtor nation in world history. And we still tell our kids to save money. There's something wrong. There's something really rotten wrong.
Well, you know that it's becoming mainstream when the biggest banks in Wall Street call it the debasement trade and openly advocate for owning gold and silver, something that is very unusual
Yeah.
for Wall Street. But, to this end, and I want to focus a little bit more on the silver market again before we zoom out bigger. For the longest time, it has been speculated, including by you, that the silver market has been manipulated, that the silver price was intentionally suppressed by the paper market. One of the reasons was potentially to keep prices low for military and industrial complex uses. The silver market is still priced in paper, but demand is becoming increasingly physical. There's always been a huge disconnect between paper silver and the global silver market. There are roughly 100 to 250 paper ounces of silver trading for every 1 ounce of physical silver that's actually available for delivery. But now we have this trend where people are demanding physical delivery. They're taking delivery of the silver. Do you think that the manipulation in the market that you have said is likely going on is now being exposed with this demand for physical delivery?
Absolutely. They play games with that stuff. Like J.P. Morgan was fined about almost $1 billion, 940 million, for playing games. The reason for that is they sell silver they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So they were selling into the future. Oh, here we have some silver, and they don't have any of it. And so they were selling it, and they can raise whatever they do to keep the price low. But now people said we want delivery, and there's a panic going on because they can't deliver. And as a person who owns mines, my first silver mine was in Argentina, and I made the mistake of selling it to Yamana, and I wish I hadn't sold it. But silver, I'll say it again, silver is the metal of the information age.
Right. And you're absolutely right. Microchips, data centers, all
Yes,
of
correct.
this AI,
AI.
AI for sure. I mean, just my cell phone, 0.3 grams of silver in every cell phone, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you consider how many cell phones are produced. And then you also take into account the fact that it's hard to recycle. You don't extract those tiny amounts of silver from those appliances. Then you've got Elon Musk coming up with the Optimus robot. Those robots are going to take a heck of a lot of silver because it is the ultimate conductive material. So, Robert, when we're seeing this physical demand, the structural change with the paper silver now being exposed, I mean, do you think that this now changes the silver market for good? Do you think that we're seeing a structural change in the market? And what does that mean for prices ultimately?
Well, I'm a hardcore silver bug since '65, and I was collecting that stuff as a kid. And it's about time. I think anybody who is saving dollars is an idiot, because as Dalio says, when gold and silver move in tandem, that means the smart money is dumping fiat money for real money. That's what it means. So meanwhile, mom and pop are still telling their kids, "Oh, be sure to put your savings in the bank, and you get some da." And then the Japan carry trade. I don't know what that's going to do to the stock market. And Buffett just sold off on his stocks $350 billion got getting out of the stock market due to what Japan did for cutting out the carry trade, selling low interest money, Japan yen. So we're at the most crucial time. I wish I knew which way we're going to go. As I said, is it inflation? Or is it hyperinflation like the Weimar Republic? Or is it the Great New Depression? I don't know.
Well, just to be technically accurate, hyperinflation is 50% inflation month over month, which is pretty dramatic. But again, we'll go to macro. I just want to focus on silver and where you are in terms of trading and buying. You posted on X that you would buy up to 100 and wait.
Yeah.
Are you waiting? Are you buying some more? Is there a level you're selling it? What would you expect a pullback? Where are you in terms of the
Well,
the trading movements?
let me give you a lesson from my rich dad, who was my best friend's father. He says, your profit's made when you buy, not when you sell. So if you're now at, let's say, 114 for silver today, you missed the boat. You should have been buying earlier. That's really what it means to me, at least. So what I've been saying also is pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. So I don't want to be a hog and keep buying some more as
You
it goes higher and higher and higher and higher.
it, so you're not buying some more silver? You
No, I stopped. I stopped I was buying at $5. Do you know what I mean? And so I never sold. What I was, the rumor is I sold my silver. I've never sold silver, but I own a lot of silver. A lot. So I have enough. I'm set. I make enough money.
okay? So you're
I,
not buying any more
I don't
silver.
want to get greedy, but those who are jumping in now, be more careful than I was when it was $5.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you were lucky that you got in very early, or very smart to get in very early into that trade. But is it too late for people that don't have exposure to silver to get in now, especially given the context of what you're saying of continued debasement of fiat currencies? If they weren't as knowledgeable as you and they didn't invest in silver, do you think that it still makes sense? Not
Well, I
giving
don't give
financial advice.
I, I,
Not giving financial advice, but do you
no.
think it would make sense to get in at $100?
Let your conscience be your guide. You know what I mean? Like, it's really easy now that everybody's piling. That's how it was at Vancouver. People are now panicking for the first time. So how high can silver go? Probably $500. But I personally, I made my money. I have enough. So that's all I'm saying. Pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered.
Got it.
I don't want to be a hog. I like to eat. So anyway, it's really a spooky time. That's all I'm saying. It's not a time to just go jumping in and say, "Oh, I'm gonna get rich." You-
Well, let's talk about this $500 silver, because that was one of the
yeah.
buzz points coming out of the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. Some people say that this particular silver squeeze in 2026 could see silver go as high as 500.
Yeah.
You could see silver hitting 500 in what time frame?
Yeah. But how much enough is enough for you?
But
So
what time frame do you see silver potentially hitting 500, and do you think it could happen in a year's time?
most of it, Michelle, is what's the national debt? That's my parallel. We're the biggest debtor nation in world history. And if the Fed, which is, there's this book I recommend everybody read. It's called The Communist Manifesto. The Fed is communist, a central bank. And so as long as the Fed is jerking around with the prices, you've got to be more careful, more cautious. So the reason I support you and what you do is people need information so they can make a more educated decision for themselves. I made my decision back in 1965. I was 19 years old, and I said, I like silver. I have enough. I'm not going to be a pig.
But do you have an outlook for a silver price target?
Yeah.
What is it?
Like I said, it's the future. Silver is the future metal. Like iron was the future of the industrial age. So those buildings, in the backdrop behind you, all those tall buildings, without iron ore, they would not be possible. But in the information age, this is the future. So how high can this go? I just suggest people listen to your program and learn for themselves rather than just, it's going to go up, it's going to go up. It's going to go up, but don't be stupid about it. Don't get greedy.
Well, let's pull it back out to something that you mentioned, and that is China now restricting its silver exports. That in itself is a message. China has rolled out a 2-year export licensing regime for silver. Only 44 companies worldwide are now approved to export silver. State media says that silver is being regulated on the same footing as rare earths. China, one of the world's largest producers and refiners of silver and controls an already very tightening supply for the US and Europe. Then we have the United States, the Trump administration officially adding silver to the US critical minerals list. And that is a big deal because that effectively says that Washington sees silver as essential to national security, economic stability, and the functioning of modern infrastructure, to your point, from electrical circuits to batteries to solar panels, AI, hardware, defense systems. So when we have countries taking these kind of moves, do you think that the US will be establishing a national silver stockpile?
They're really, that's not, I don't know that stuff. Trump is a good friend of mine. I love the guy a lot, but I don't try to tell him what to do. When the reason I love what you do, Michelle, is my question is, what are you going to do? Do you know what I mean? People talk about the Fed, they talk about Trump, they talk about this. But the question is, how many ounces of silver do you have? How many ounces of gold do you have? Bitcoin and Ethereum, all that. How much do you have? The problem with most people is they don't take action because they're afraid of making a mistake. We all make mistakes. We make mistakes is how we learn. So this is not a time to just jump in, which people are encouraging. Like, Bitcoin to me is a kind of a joke right now. Everybody's saying, well, I bought Bitcoin at 6,000. Am I happy? Very happy.
Yeah.
But because it hits 1 million doesn't mean I'm going to buy more of it. That's how ridiculous people are getting. So, like I'll say it again, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And the reason people should listen to what you're saying is because you got to decide how high it's going to go for you. When's your entry point? What's your exit point? I'm never selling any silver. I like silver.
We'll go back to Bitcoin for sure. I'm curious, though, if you think that silver is now going to become acquired by central banks, though. Asking you to speculate on what central banks could be doing, because we are starting to see, reports that the Russian central bank has implemented a formal silver acquisition program. Saudi Arabia has also taken a significant position in a silver ETF as a way to get exposure. India regulators have moved to formally include silver within banking collateral systems. Do you see a shift? I want to know why you're laughing, but do you see a shift that sovereign policymakers could now be adding silver as a monetary asset, accumulating that on a similar level as they've been accumulating gold, a trend that you were very early on to highlight?
Yeah, like you never know. I might be walking on water next week. You never know. Things like this. The reason I laugh is everybody wants to know what the Fed's going to do, what this Trump's going to do. The reason I recommend people listen to you, the question is, what are you going to do?
But those moves impact what we're going to do.
That's
right?
my
Those
biggest
moves,
question.
those moves confirm, those moves negate.
You can study the Fed, which is communist. Study them. I read this book in 1965, went to military school. Most academics are Marxist. Marx was an academic alcoholic drunk. But most professors, like my poor dad, Stanford, University of Chicago, these Marxists think that because they have a college degree, you should listen to them. Well, I think they should listen to you. I think they should listen to somebody like me who's in the market. I actually have silver mines and gold mines. But people listen to our academic types who are Marxists. That's a mistake. That's a big mistake because Marx believed in taxation. Marx believed in the abolition of private property. And Marx was the one who says that graduated income tax is essential for the spread of Marxism or communism. Today, Michelle, as you know, in New York City, we have a Marxist mayor. And California, this guy, they call him Newscum here in Phoenix. He now is going to tax everything. Tax is Marxist. America was founded as a tax-free nation in 1773. Always remember that. And then in 1776 was the revolution. But 1773, America fought the British because of our taxation. What Dalio was saying, America is now going to fight China. That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, we'll get to that, but to your point, yeah, the Fed, many would say, is a cartel. You basically have a bunch of unelected guys, I mean,
Central.
nominated by the Senate, a central monopoly deciding money and deciding credit, which many argue really does not make much sense, in a capitalist society. But nonetheless, we have the Fed, and we actually just had some comments from the current Fed chair, Jerome Powell, responding to this tremendous move in gold and in silver. And he was asked whether this is any kind of reflection on what is happening with the dollar and whether it is a signal of credibility of the Fed's actions. Let's play the soundbite and get your thoughts there.
I'm sure you've noticed gold and silver prices have experienced historic gains of late. And I'm wondering how much attention, if any, you pay to those moves and what message you may take from these significant price increases we've seen for precious metals.
Don't take much message macroeconomically. The argument can be made that we're losing credibility or something. It's simply not the case. If you look at where inflation expectations are, our credibility is right where it needs to be. So we look at those things. We don't get spun up over particular asset price changes, although we do monitor them, of course.
What do you make of that? Fed Chair Powell saying that the Fed doesn't read macro signals from gold and silver, that credibility is not an issue. What do you make of that, Robert?
Well, how do you tell when he's lying? Is when his lips are moving. He has to sing the song. He has to sing the song and dance. It's just that, Michelle, things are changing way too fast for listening to an old man like him or myself. This is what I'm investing in, what people want to know, is AI is kicking in. Unemployment is going to go through the roof. But is that going to mean you're going to get poorer? No. AI is going to suck more energy. So I'm investing in oil and natural gas. So I watch what happens and then I take action. And that's why I was acknowledging you for being on my corner all these years. Because when I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it was those academic types, at the publishing houses, like my poor dad. I said, you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to money. And I said, your house is not an asset. The rich don't work for money. And I like gold and silver. But they don't like that. So really choose your teachers wisely. YouTube is really full of very, very good speakers or teachers, also some big flakes. And so in today's world, choose your teachers wisely. I love Ray Dalio. I love guys like Records. And I listen to them. Are they always right? No. But I listen to them. And that's why I acknowledged when I first came on. Thanks for being on my corner because, I was Rodney Dangerfield for a long time, but lately now, I think they think I'm a genius. No, I just happened to hold up a little silver $50 when I was 18, 19 years old. And I said, something's wrong here. It's not silver, it's copper. You don't have to go to get a PhD to know that something copper is not silver. Or how about when you go to the stores, well, inflation is only at 5%, you go, how come chicken and eggs are so expensive? Well, because every time you print fake money, prices go up. And that's why I'm very concerned, Michelle, is that the middle class is now toast. And homelessness, as you can see all over across the country, is exploding. And it was one of our founders, I think it was Thomas Jefferson, who warned that when a central bank takes over our money supply, homelessness will increase. And you can see it now. People can't afford a house, much less chicken and eggs right now. So that's what happens when you have fake money coming into the system.
Well, one of the things that we have seen central banks around the world do, and that is buy gold at record levels and consider to bolster.
Because they're dumping bonds. That's why those criminal things called bonds. I never understood bonds at all. Japan and China are dumping our bonds. Gotta get grief.
Yeah, that is part of the broader de-dollarization trend. They're dumping U.S. dollar-denominated
Michelle,
treasuries.
I am so old, okay? I was getting out of the Marine Corps in 1974. And 1974 was when the U.S. government passed ERISA. Employee Retirement Income Security Act, known as the 401k. And so I was a Marine pilot. Most of my friends were going to fly for the airlines. And I said, well, and the stockbroker companies were advertising for this new thing called a financial planner. So I thought I'd go check it out. So I'm 27 years old. And I go to some like Charles Schwab, whatever it was. And they're advertising for these financial planners. The room was full of school teachers. And I looked at that. I said, these school teachers are going to tell me how to manage my money. I said, that's a bad thing. It's a long way of saying I am concerned is that my generation, the boomer generation, will be homeless. Millions. Because Buffett just sold $380 billion in stock. What's that going to do to your portfolio of 401ks? That's my question. Not the heck what Kiyosaki's doing. What's Buffett doing? What's this guy Fed doing, printing more money? Those are questions people should ask. And the next question, who are you going to listen to? And then what are you going to do? Save money? Gotta be crazy.
Right. I mean, and many are saying that the market is going up as a hedge against inflation, as a hedge against fiat debasement, because people just do not want to be sitting in cash.
How do you know when they're lying? Because their lips are moving.
Well, I mean, when you look at the market has gone up, but if you look at it relative to gold, then
Just look
it's
at
actually
Michelle. Look what Buffett's doing. He's dumping. Okay, so just watch what he does. He's a lot smarter than me. He's a lot more smarter than you. He's going to a cash position right now. He's getting out of his stock market. And the reason for that is that the Japanese carry trade just ended, where they're renting money out at, let's say, 1%, and people were buying bonds at 4%. All that's ending. So that's what Dalio was saying. There's three phases: short-term debt, long-term debt, the challenge by a new power, which is China. I'm afraid we're going to go to war. That's my biggest concern. I served 2 tours in Vietnam, shot a lot of people. I don't want to go to war again. That's my concern. But you got to be careful right now. War careful. Be careful who you listen to. Not me or you, but just choose your teachers wisely. So I like Dalio. I like records. I like Johnson and stuff like this. But this is the best part about YouTube is you get to listen to different people's opinions. And this is really that time to listen to different people.
well, I know one of the people that you listen to is Andy Schechtman.
I love that guy. I love that. He's my hero.
And I know you cite him in many of the interviews and conversations that you have. And one of the things that Andy Schechtman has been saying for a very long time is that we're headed towards a bifurcation of the global monetary system, with gold quietly being reinserted into the system. And this was long before it was on other people's radars. Andy made the point, as you've also echoed the same point, that the Biden administration excessively weaponized the dollar, especially after they kicked Russia off SWIFT. That accelerated that de-dollarization trend, that central banks are buying gold, dumping dollar reserves in treasuries. The BRICS building a coalition to move away from the dollar, trading in local currencies, creating their own settlement infrastructure. In fact, not too long ago, they launched a pilot of their own BRICS unit currency, backed by 40% gold in a basket of their own currencies. So you say, listen to your mentors. I know you paid attention to Andy as well as Jim Ricketts, as well as lots of people that argue that gold is being reintroduced into the global financial system through this deliberate action by central banks and BRICS coordination, that China appears to be building a digital renminbi for trade and settlement through blockchain, with gold operating as the neutral reserve and credibility layer. So not a gold standard in the old sense, but gold as the trust anchor in a system where fiat and the dollar alone just do not carry global confidence anymore. So you say you're afraid we're going to war. Do you see the global monetary reset happening? Do you think we're starting to see a global monetary reset, with gold being introduced and ultimately replacing the dollar as that global reserve currency or global reserve asset?
Well, could I say this, or I said for years, it's not what the Fed's doing. Are they going the gold standard? I think all of us should be on the gold standard, our own gold standard. We should all be our own silver standard. And that's why for years I said, I don't save money, I save gold or silver. That puts yourself on the gold and silver standard. And that's as simple as I'm a U.S. Marine, not the brightest guy on earth.
I would beg to differ.
I just know that I better trust what I do for my family and things like this. Not everybody likes what I say, as you know. My family, I took my first company public in Japan and China. I listed it on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So this is not 2004. So we listed on Toronto Stock Exchange. We struck gold in China, Dalian province. For a brief moment in time, I was a billionaire. And then something terrible happened. The Chinese government called me and said, "Thank you very much." They nationalized my gold mine. And Michelle, I have a new respect for this word, country risk. Don't do business in countries or with people you don't trust. It's that simple. And in gold, I trust, and silver, I trust. But I don't do business with people and countries I don't trust. I almost stopped eating Chinese food. I love Chinese food. But when they took my gold mine, I couldn't believe those sons of a, I couldn't believe it. How can they do that? But we did that to Russia, as you know, Michelle, when Biden, that criminal, he put the SWIFT program, and all he did, he basically screwed Russia. And so that's why the BRICS came in, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. We're at a currency war, which is what Jim Rickards talks about as currency wars. Currency wars lead to trade wars, lead to shooting wars. That's historical. Please be careful right now. That's all I'm saying. Become your own central bank, have your own gold, have your own silver on hand. I don't trust SLV and I don't trust GLD. If you trust it, fine. But that's what J.P. Morgan got nailed for, was ever selling gold and silver they didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Or future selling it. I don't control them, but I can control what's in my safe. And my safe is in Liechtenstein. Why is my safe in Liechtenstein? Because in 1933, a guy named Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of the biggest communists of our times, confiscated our gold. So is that going to happen again? I don't know, but I'd rather have my gold in Liechtenstein than in the States. Period. Very simple. I trust history might repeat, but I want to learn from history, not ignore it.
Well, if we're looking at how history repeats itself, the fact remains that every global reserve currency has come and gone, that every currency gets debased. If it's from the Roman Empire, where they started chipping away at the silver or gold content in the coins, to how every global reserve currency, as empires rise and fall, so does that reserve currency. That's a theme that Ray Dalio speaks to. You mentioned Ray Dalio earlier. He reiterated a similar point speaking at the World Economic Forum recently. So let's listen to what he had to say, and then I want to get your thoughts on the other side.
He's a smart boy.
The monetary order is breaking down. Okay. What I mean by the monetary order is that fiat currencies and debt as a storehold of wealth is not being held by central banks in the same way, and that there was a change. The biggest market to move last year was the gold market, far better than the tech markets, right, and so on. And the U.S. markets underperformed foreign markets because of the fact you could see it in the numbers of the central banks and so on. So let's just look at the fact that on the other side of trade deficits and trade wars, there are capital and capital wars. Let's just take a moment on that capital war issue, okay? We know that both the holders of U.S. dollar denominated debt, which is money, and those who need it, the United States, are worried about each other, right? So if you have other countries who are holding it and they're worried about each other, and we're producing a lot of it That's a big issue, right? So you have to explain what is going on with fiat currencies, generally speaking. And now if you take the conflicts, you can't ignore the possibility that capital wars, in other words, maybe there's not the same inclination to buy U.S. debt and so on. We at least need to talk about those possibilities and find out who is buying and selling what that is behind these market movements.
So, he's basically saying that we're going to have a global monetary reset, maybe not in exactly the clip from that soundbite, but that is part of his broader thesis. You've made the point, you don't trust governments, you trust gold. Governments are no longer trusting other governments and the currencies printed by those other governments, they trust gold. Do you see gold being reintegrated into the global monetary system?
Like I said, I don't know, but I integrated it in my system a long time ago. That's all I'm saying. I don't care what they do. I want to know I know what you're going to do, your viewers are going to do. There's one thing more that Dalio said, because he's a very smart guy. Him as records and those guys. History proves we don't learn from history. And what Ray is saying, there was 3 phases that money goes through: short-term debt, long-term debt, challenged by a world power. So short-term, long-term, China. He says every time these 3 events have happened in the world, tragic currency collapses. So that, not the last time, but one time it happened was in the Weimar Republic, which they laugh about how a person went to the supermarket with a wheelbarrow full of Reichsmark and they stole her wheelbarrow. Well, I don't know if it's true or not, but people are going to start selling wheelbarrows pretty soon, stealing them, because people are desperate, because we're repeating a historic event right now. Short-term debt, 5 to 8 years. Long-term debt, 75 to 100 years. And then the challenge by a world power, China. This has happened historically. And all 3 events are happening simultaneously. And you look at guys like Buffett are doing it, less smarter than you or I. He's dumping stocks. And so all these baby boomers are hanging on to the S&P 500 and 401k. I think a lot of baby boomers are going to be homeless. That's my concern. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But I look at what the smart money is doing, much smarter than me. And I'd rather have gold and silver than Apple shares right now. That's the difference.
Well, look, I hear your point, I hear your concern. I grew up in South Africa, so I'm looking north to Zimbabwe. Case in point. Yeah, I know you got the Krugers over there. I love those.
Zimbabwe. I just love that country.
Zimbabwe?
I was there when the Zimbabwe dollar collapsed.
Well, that's my point. We've seen this happen.
It wasn't pretty, Michelle. I was there when it collapsed. I was in Bulawayo, their places. And the Zimbabwe dollar collapsed. And the next thing you know, they had the war vets, these young black guys with AK-47s. I'm sitting in the back of my truck. I'm an elephant hunter. And I have a double rifle, 250 cals. And these black guys come up, they put the AKs on me. All I could do was this. They took everything. And then this little not young, but a little old Rhodesian woman, there was Rhodesia before Zimbabwe. And she came out. They took her, they dumped her in the truck. And as she was driving off, Michelle, she says, "Burn this place down. Burn it down." Michelle, it was the most sickening feeling in my stomach. They dragging this little white woman off. She says, "Burn this place down." So my PH and I, the hunter, the professional hunter, we take torches, and the first place we set fire to was a diesel yard. And that diesel yard went up. Then we torched her house, which I think was 200 years old. And we torched all of her farmlands after that. She says, "Leave them nothing," because they wanted reparations. They want their land back. So I was in Zimbabwe. I have tremendous respect for the country. I was just there this summer teaching my little cash flow game, hopefully maybe some you teach a person to fish, they might have a chance, you know. So I love Zimbabwe. Brave people out there.
Right. Well, it's maybe no coincidence that after the collapse of what was formerly known as the breadbasket of Africa, and that hyperinflation, that Zimbabwe's actually introduced a gold-linked currency, the ZiG, the Zimbabwe gold. It's to replace the depreciation Zimbabwean dollar and to curb hyperinflation. It hasn't really worked so well. So yeah, but it's just an example of, again, you see the problem, you go back to that same solution of thousands and thousands of years, and that's getting back that standard of gold, which has just emerged, re-emerged for thousands and thousands of years. So not to sort of belabor the point, and I know that you see yourself being your own central bank, but when you see the bigger picture here, do you think that, the United States could be taking some kind of action to see what's happening around the world and perhaps bolster its own gold reserves, even not officially shadow covert program? And, I'll bring it back to one of Andy's theories, because, he believes that there could be this secret shadow program by the United States to be buying back gold, especially in preparation for this monetary reset, one that does bring gold back into the system to re-anchor confidence in the treasury market, even if it does mean sacrificing the dollar's current structure. And you look at the net inflows of gold into the United States, and the numbers are crazy. I mean, people are taking delivery of physical gold. Gold is coming back into the United States. And the question is, who's buying this gold? Now, the United States officially has not added any gold since 1953, but this could be a government-directed, off-the-books shadow program that could be happening. Officially, the president can direct the Treasury Secretary under the Gold Reserve Act and the Exchange Stabilization Fund to trade gold or foreign currency just with the Secretary of the Treasury's approval. We know Scott Bessent's a big gold bug. So we do have the Gold Revaluation Act, where you could revalue the Treasury's gold stockpile, which hasn't been revalued since 1973. But basically, the U.S. may be seeing what's happening with these other central banks that are buying gold, secretly buying its own gold and laying the foundation for a gold-back adjustment to the monetary system, not because it necessarily wants to, but because it has to. So they're like mirroring the BRICS strategy. Do you think that that is something that could be happening? And I know you're going to say you're focusing on your own world, but it's all linked to what's happening in the outside world.
I think, the biggest lesson to learn is that people don't learn from history. And there's some really good books out there. There's a head named Philip Haslam. He's a South African. He wrote the book called When Money Destroys Nations. Let me say it again. Philip Haslam, Haslam. When Money Destroys Nations. It was a story of Zimbabwe crashing. And like I said, I was there. The other guy's really smart. This guy, Lawrence Lepard's book here, The Big Print.
Had him on the show?
He is one smart boy. Ooh. And everybody should get this book too, because what this all saying is that it hasn't got worse yet. It's going to get worse before it gets better. So it's not like it's going to get over with and all this. It's going to get worse. So what Lawrence Lepard is saying in this book, the Big Print, Lawrence Lepard, is that they're going to start printing heavy to try the last gas to try and save it. So I'd be preparing for that right now. And he also says something very important, which I thought was disgusting. Guess who teaches the best and brightest, like the HBS, Harvard Business School and Yale and Harvard, Yale, those guys, Dartmouth. Guess who teaches them money? The Fed, a criminal organization, a Marxist organization. I think they should just have every kid at Harvard Business School read this book here, because that's who's educating them, the Fed. And so it's really a spooky time, Michelle, and let me repeat it again. For a long time, you've been on my side. I've been saying stupid things like buy silver and gold. That's all I've been saying. Become your own gold standard. Become your own silver standard. Take physical possession of it if you can. Keep it away from you so nobody come home to visit you.
Well, you're holding up the Communist Manifesto there, and I know that in response to that, you wrote the Capitalist Manifesto, where you argued that the U.S. was drifting away from true free market capitalism, and you warned that money printing, bailouts, distorted incentives were in fact hollowing out the middle class, while a lack of financial education was pushing people towards Marxist ideas by blaming capitalism for problems created by policy, not by markets. We've seen, I mean, that's potentially playing out in New York City with the election of Mamdani, something that you've alluded to. But you wrote the book. Have things increased in that direction?
Yes.
Or has there been some kind of improvement? Or are
Michelle, you
we?
can see it. You can see it. Look at this guy, Gavin Newsom in California. The number one issue in this book here is the abolition of private property. He just passed that wealth tax, Newsom. In Phoenix, we call him Newscum, not Newsom, because he wants to run for president. Oh, God, heaven forbid. But anyway, not to get political. But anyway, what the
Too
wealth
late for
tax
that.
does is everything you do belongs to the government. So that's what the abolition of private property. So let's say you own the Mona Lisa as a painting. It's worth millions of dollars. The moment you hang it on your wall, California can tax you for it. That's kind of what it means. So what this book is talking about, number one, was abolition of private property. Number two was workers of the world unite. Labor unions. What's the biggest labor union in America? Teachers. Teachers union. So that's why Forbes magazine called the NEA, the National Education Association, the National Extortion Organization. And my whole family, they're very good people, but they're Marxists at heart. They believe in taxing the rich. They all belong to labor unions. My poor dad was head of the teachers union. So as a young boy, about 15 or 16, I listened on my father holding meetings with school teachers in our house, and my skin crawled. I had to take a bath after listening to these guys because I was listening to my rich dad, who was my best friend's father. And that's how I got capitalism versus Marxism and where rich dad, poor dad comes from. My poor dad was a hardcore capitalist. My rich dad, my poor dad's a hardcore Marxist. Rich dad's a hardcore capitalist. And when you see the differences, you go, wow, which one do I want to be? And our schools are teaching us to be Marxist. That's why I wrote Capitalist Manifesto.
How do we change that? Are you seeing a potential shift maybe under the Trump administration, pushing us back towards more capitalist ideologies, more towards ideologies that you could argue reward hard work, the American dream? I mean, taxes are still way too high. We know that. But can this be changed?
Well, as Marine pilots would say, CYA, cover your ass. Protect yourself first, too.
Right.
Because as pilots, if I got shot, my crew went down with me.
Right.
And so it was important that I stayed vigilant, and in the Marine Corps, where we're taught to crash 3 times every day, we had to practice crashing every day. And it didn't make sense. I went from Pensacola, Florida for flight school, went to Camp Pendleton, next stop, Vietnam. I said, why are we practicing crashing too much? And this is the reason why Michelle finally understood it. When most amateur pilots crash or the engines stall, they pull back on the stick. So the aircraft starts to sink, they pull back. And what the Marine Corps was teaching us to do was when the engine quit, push forward. Quit, push forward. You need to dive for the ground as hard as you can. So that's why I recommend reading, a book like this by Lawrence Lepard. It's time to push forward, not run back right now. if they start printing money, and as I suspect they will, hopefully they won't, but they suspect they will. The reason I have so many silver U.S. Eagles is because, as J.P. Morgan says, gold and money, and gold and silver are money. The rest is credit. So if Lepard is correct, they're going to go to print money, which may be hyperinflation. If they don't print, we go to depression. Neither one are good. So I want to hold on to gold and silver, real money. And I have silver eagles, and I can go around town and buy something with silver eagles, where I might not be able to buy anything with a Zimbabwe dollar. Because that's why I said I was in Zimbabwe. I was in the wrong place at the right time. But when Zimbabwe crashed, it wasn't pretty. You couldn't eat. You couldn't exchange. Nobody would take your money. Thank God I had U.S. dollars. But it wasn't pretty, Michelle, as you probably can guess.
No, we've seen what happens when currencies fail and the devastating consequences and ramifications of that. Robert, you've been making several references to your time as a gunship pilot during the Vietnam War. And let me firstly say thank you for your service. And I would also like to tell the viewers that you were in fact awarded the Air Medal for bravery during your service. And when we've talked about this before, you've said that having served in the military, you were concerned that you were hearing the drumbeats of war escalating, that you were concerned that all of this monetary conflict could blow up into a bigger kinetic war. Do you still feel that way?
But anything's possible, Michelle. We're on the edge. I got one more. I think I'm the luckiest guy on earth. I just got to replace General Michael Flynn as the Veteran of the Year. So I'm next month, February 12th, I'll be in Mar-a-Lago accepting the award as America's Veteran of the Year. And in November, I'll be in the parade in Washington, D.C. as America's replacing General Michael Flynn. Now, my friends, who are all Marine pilots, they're laughing. They can't believe it. So at Mar-a-Lago, there's going to be a table of 10 of us. And my Marine pilot friends are going to sit there. They say, that guy up there is the Veteran of the Year.
You're too modest, Robert. You're way, way, way too modest.
Michelle.
You say people made fun of you. You're one of the world's top financial gurus.
I
Before
know.
gold and silver. I mean, you have one of the best-selling financial advice book of all time, and you've written several dozen books since then. So I appreciate the modesty, but it's not an accurate reflection.
I tell everybody this because I'm proud of it. I was court-martialed twice.
For what?
That of the year. I'm going. I don't hide it. I disclose it. The reason is, it was one of the best things I could do to tell the truth. You know that movie by Jack Nicholson, A Few Good Men? He says, you can't handle the truth. That was me. I'm getting court-martialed for the second time. I'm going, maybe it's me that's the problem.
Well,
I was having a party in my helicopter all the time, and they nailed me for it. So I'm going to be at Mar-a-Lago telling the world that I got court-martialed twice. But that's what the Marines say. Semper Fidelis. My Marine friends never left. We're still friends. We're tight as they come. And that is something that is kind of missing today. So my Marine pilot friends are going to sit at the same table laughing their butts off with, what's he doing up there? But we learn from our mistakes. And unfortunately, our schools punish us for making mistakes. So I still remember when I realized I better tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. I called up the prosecuting attorney, was after my butt. This is 1974. And it's a nice Jewish attorney, Captain Abrams. I said, Captain, I'm coming in. I spent 3 hours telling him the truth. At the end of it, I think I lost 30 pounds. Jeez, it was terrible. I was lying through my teeth. And at the end of it, I looked up at him and I said, Captain, how many years will I be in jail? And it says, Lieutenant, you're free. Honorable discharge. Thank you for telling the truth. And
And the
those
truth
lessons
shall
are
set you
priceless.
free.
Those
And
are
the truth.
priceless.
Yeah. Congratulations to you. And
Yeah.
as they say, the truth shall
They'll
set you
set you
free.
free.
Yeah. I
And I
mean,
think that's what we need now about our money system.
yeah.
It's rigged against the people. Our monetary system is corrupt. It's as corrupt as it's ever been. Historically, it's going to cause the poor and middle class to get poorer. That's why I write and I say what I do. That's why I thank people like you for being in my corner when what I was saying was not popular at all. Still not popular, but at least you listen to what I have to say. Our money system is designed to steal it from us. The Fed is a Marxist organization. And that's not easy to say as a Marine. I'm an academy graduate too. I'm a ring knocker. So I just continue to learn to tell the truth.
Do you think we should end the Fed?
That's beyond me. I mean, I ended them a long time ago as far as how it's concerned. I save gold and silver, don't take the
Right.
dollar. That's the difference. And I
Wait.
use debt. I use debt as money, but that takes a whole nother science, if you know what I mean. So I borrowed, when the 2008 crash, I borrowed $30 million because at 1971, the dollar became debt under Nixon. So I borrowed 30 million and I bought the best real estate around.
And I know you teach how to do that in your books. And I will point out, I mean, you mentioned going to Mar-a-Lago, obviously President Trump's country club there. I will point out that you've actually co-authored 2 books with President Trump focused on financial education and entrepreneurship.
He is a great man. He's got guts. Or I use other words, but you know, he wants to annex Canada. My friends in Canada hate him.
Well, he's very, very divisive, as we know. Some people argue that he's doing what needs to be done to save the American empire. Even if it means short-term pain for long-term gain, he's doing what needs to be done in order to preserve American supremacy as other countries. You may not like that, but he's doing what he's supposed to be doing as the head of America, as the head of this household. He's putting America first and doing what needs to be done. If that means a weakening dollar, if that means onshoring manufacturing, if that means making the United States more independent, if that means consolidating power in the Western Hemisphere, like the Monroe Doctrine. May not like the actions, but many argue would rather have the US running the show than China or Russia or Iran. And as much as we'd like to say kumbaya, that's not how the world works. So I can understand why he's divisive, but in terms of putting American interests, many would argue that he's doing what needs to be done. And, part of that is potentially bringing back gold covertly. Part of that is addressing Triffin's dilemma and perhaps creating a weaker dollar in order to onshore manufacturing and taking actions as we've discussed. But I want to ask you, you said that you think we could be going into hyperinflation or depression. When you look at the numbers, real GDP 2025 grew at about 4.4% in Q3 of 2025. That's huge. Second quarter GDP of 2025, 3.8%. You ask President Trump, he will say that the economy is doing extraordinarily well. It's explosive, growing, robust. Many are saying AI is really going to take us to the next level. And yet you're saying we could be hyperinflation or depression. Do you have thoughts on how the U.S. economy is doing? And I get that the purchasing power of the dollar is declining, and I get that you've got these deeper structural issues that maybe can't actually really be addressed. But in terms of growth, how do you think the president is handling the economy?
Well, as you know, Michelle, when you speak to whoever you speak to, a lot of times they talk their book. Like, if I owned gold, I do own gold mines, but if I was selling gold, I'd be talking like Andy Schectman has to talk his book. He's a gold and silver dealer. Peter Schiff talks his book. Real estate guys talk their book. So Trump is talking his book, if you know what I mean. He's got to say what he's got to say. I'm just not sure which way it's going to go. If it goes to hyperinflation, it's really like a depression anyway,
Mm-hmm.
because people can't afford to survive anyway. And as this is Thomas Jefferson or Alexander Hamilton said, that we have a central bank, people wind up homeless in the country their fathers fought for. And you look at homelessness is spreading all over the world. I mean, especially the U.S., because people can't afford to live, much less eat, and things like this, because our money is fake. I wrote my book called Fake. It was about fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. So I've been on this shtick for a long time. And again, I'll repeat myself. People like you have been in my corner, letting me just say what I want to say. It's not popular what I say, but I want to warn people that our money is fake. It was designed to steal our wealth via our money.
And since the creation of the Federal Reserve, the dollar has lost over 97% of its purchasing power, a point made in that book by Larry Lepard,
Yeah.
the big print, who we have had on this show, and we will continue to have him on because, as you say, he makes very, very important points. And, Robert, one point that you keep on coming back to in your various works, and by the way, I haven't necessarily been in your corner. I'm in the corner of providing information and insight and education. And the fact is, the information, insight, and education that you have consistently said has proven to be accurate, helpful, relevant, and the facts speak for themselves,
Yeah,
really.
well, thank for the clarity. What I mean is, you at least may get beyond the program. Do you know what I have to say?
Of course.
I don't know if you ever see me, but I was on CNN when I said Lehman was going down.
Mm-hmm.
It came down a few days later. They never invited me back. And, CNBC stopped inviting me on board because I kept telling them I don't like the stock market. I am an entrepreneur. I create stocks. I take companies
I
public,
know.
but I know how fake they are. They're completely manipulated. The reason I like gold and silver is it's kind of hard to manipulate,
Well,
So,
the physical
yeah.
is hard to manipulate. The paper markets can be manipulated and suppressed. I know, and CNBC's loss is our gain. And I know a couple of times you've said you don't own paper or anything. So you don't own stocks because that's in paper. You don't own anything that can be printed, that can be created, and hence you have a strong advocacy for hard assets like gold and silver and real estate. It's a point you've consistently made throughout your work, throughout your interviews. Another point that you've consistently made is the importance of teachers and of mentors.
Yeah.
As we wrap up here, Robert, what would you say is the best advice that you've ever been given?
Well, it was started when I was 7. I grew up in Hawaii, Hilo, Hawaii, a little sugar plantation town. And I go to Sunday school, which I almost flunked out of also. I remember sitting there and the Sunday school teacher's young girl, woman, probably about 25 years old, I'm 7. She says, "Why were the 3 wise men wise?" And I raised my hand. I said, "Because they were rich." Now, in the Methodist Church, you're not supposed to talk about money because money's evil. She goes, "Why do you say they were rich?" And I said, "Well, one had gold, one had silver, one had gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They are rich?" And she goes, "Yeah, they're very rich." She goes, "That's not the answer." I said, "So why were the 3 wise men wise?" And she said to me, "Because they were seeking the best teacher." I'm not trying to push Jesus Christ, but it became my lesson since I was 7. And ever since then, after 7, I started looking for my teachers. Who did I want to teach this to? Because the biggest asset you have is between this year and that year. And be careful what you put in it.
Yeah, and that's a point you've made consistently. Just before you wrap up, you did touch on Bitcoin, and I did want to mention that because Bitcoin is currently trading around 83,000. I know you bought it very early. It's off its peak of 126,000, but you are a very big believer in Bitcoin in terms of what it represented as a counter to the fake currency, as a counter to fiat currency that can be printed and created out of nowhere. Are you still bullish on Bitcoin? Do you still view it in the same way?
Yeah, I wouldn't take my advice on Bitcoin because I'm an old guy, real old. I just saw it go up to like 20 and it dropped down to like 1. I'm a trader. You know what I mean? I took technical trading from a guy named Elders. And so when 21, 3, it hit 6, I said, it's going to move. So I bought it at 6. I also sold out to take my profits.
Mm-hmm. Do you
So
still hold any Bitcoin?
a little bit, I like it, but I'm a trader, not an investor. I'm an investor in gold and silver. I mean, I hang on forever. I'll pass it on. But the things you trade, like I own a Shelby Mustang, it's fast a car, but I don't, I'm going to trade that up. And I don't invest in it. I use it. So that's all I'm saying is you got to make distinctions. And that's why choosing the best teacher was I had to choose my rich dad, not my poor dad.
Mm-hmm.
Tough decision. My family still doesn't like me because of that. But they're still poor. I mean, they're not poor, but they're middle class, if you know what I mean. I like being rich.
Yeah, and I know you've also bought some Wagyu beef with that money that you've accrued. I know you've invested in beef and in cattle through the years. So I know you're very consistent in yield producing assets. Well, our conversation has definitely produced a lot of yield. Thank you, Robert, as always, for sharing your thoughts and your insights with us. Final thoughts as we wrap up.
Well, again, gold and silver are money. Everything else is fake. Thank you.
Robert Kiyosaki, always a pleasure. Love chatting with you. We'll talk to you again very, very soon. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining us here on MFM.
Thank you very much.
And as always, thank you for watching. If you enjoy our content, find it informative, educational, entertaining, and we hope all of the above, please subscribe and please share it with others. We also have a weekly newsletter that you don't want to miss out on. It has previews and specials, as well as markets and macro insights. So there is a link in the description. It's also on our website, milesfranklin.com. And as always, we do love hearing from you. So leave us your comments. Feel free to praise, whine, or just opine. We read them. We love getting ideas from them on topics, questions, and guests. So make sure to leave us your feedback. For me, Rochelle Makori, and the rest of the team, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Until then, stay sovereign.
This is The Real Story with Michelle Makori.